Okay, so now let's talk about startups in the present day. We previously just talked about how, sort of as the industries mature, we went from, this Cambrian explosion of all of these auto companies or oil companies and whatnot to a few Goliaths that have very large barriers to entry. In the present day, the explosion of entrants is not in oil or automobiles, which are thought of as very capital intensive, but rather in software and in computers. And part of the reason for that, it's useful to study history going, not to the 1800s and 1900s, but let's say after 1950. What happened was this entire industry built out in the Bay Area to support semiconductors and then later computer networking and the internet. And what's interesting about this whole era is the transition from kind of computers to the internet in the 89 to 92 period is something that, why did it happen exactly at that point? Because if you know some of the history of networking, there was reasonable networking over the 80s, but the internet only really exploded in the early 90s. And I believe there's at least two developments that are very useful to keep in mind from a market perspective that changed that sigmoidal process and that allowed the emergence of what we now know as the internet startup. The first such event was the collapse of the Soviet Union and the worldwide turn towards free markets in Eastern Europe, India, China, and the former USSR. And the second was a repeal of the NSF acceptable use policy, which had banned commerce on the internet. And so this kind of opened up a global, market, and this made commerce legal and viable on the internet. And the combination of those was basically what ushered in the age of the global internet market, and thus the internet startup. And what is an internet startup? It's that business that can start in a dorm room and scale to the entire world, accepting payments and providing services to anyone on the planet, anywhere, at any time, without any need for natural resources other than power, and no need for expensive permits or human clerks. And so when we go back to our definition of startup equals growth, we can see why the internet and a global internet market is so well suited for an extremely rapidly growing business. Okay, so that's kind of startups in the present, and let's pause here and then let's talk about the fall of the USSR and the NSFAUP and their relevance to the global internet market.